All right, back in the late 70s, early 80s, Love Ya Blue struck a chord all over America because the Houston Oilers were very good, thanks in part to Hall of Fame running back and East Texas legend
Earl Campbell once ran through grown men like they were nothing more than tackling dummies. He was unstoppable, a Heisman winner, an NFL MVP, a Hall of Famer whose legs looked like they were carved out of granite. So how does a man built like that end up at 72, rolling through Texas on an electric wheelchair? What happened to Earl Campbell? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you might just understand why they call him the toughest man to ever play football, and why that toughness came at a price nobody saw coming. See, Earl Campbell's story doesn't start in a stadium. It starts in Tyler, Texas, in a house full of kids, 11 of them to be exact. Earl was right in the middle of all that noise, all that chaos, all that love. His father worked the rose fields outside of town, waking up before sunrise and coming home with dirt under his nails. And even though money was tight, the Campbell house was never short on love. Then, when Earl was just 11 years old, his father died suddenly. Just like that, the foundation of his world cracked. His mother, Ann Campbell, was left to raise 11 children on her own. And somehow, she held it together through sheer will. She leaned on Earl, the oldest boy still living at home, and he stepped up in ways most 11-year-olds never have to. He worked in those same rose fields his father once worked. He helped raise his younger siblings. He learned early what it meant to carry weight for other people. That responsibility, that early taste of pressure, shaped the man he'd become. It's like the load he carried off the field as a kid prepared him for the loads he'd carry on it as a man. By the time Earl got to John Tyler High School, something special was happening. This wasn't just a good football player. This was a force of nature wearing shoulder pads. In 1973, he led his team to a state championship, bulldozing through defenses that had no answer for him. And by the time he graduated, he was being called the best high school football player in the entire country. Can you imagine that kind of pressure as a teenager? Recruiters started showing up at his mama's front door. Every major program in the nation wanted him. Oklahoma came calling, hard. Other big-name schools lined up behind them, but Earl chose to stay close to home. He picked the University of Texas, turning down a chance to leave the state, because Tyler was who he was, and Texas felt like an extension of that. And once he put on that burnt orange jersey, Texas football would never be the same. As a sophomore, he was already rushing for over 1,000 yards and earning All-American honors, announcing to the entire country that the hype out of Tyler hadn't been exaggerated one bit. But it was his senior year, 1977, where Earl Campbell transformed from a great college running back into an absolute legend. That season, he rushed for 1,744 yards, a Southwest Conference record that would stand for the next 16 years before anyone could touch it. He led the entire nation in rushing. He led the nation in scoring. Defenses would stack 8, sometimes 9 men in the box just to try and slow him down. And it still wasn't enough. And at the end of that magical season, they handed him the Heisman Trophy, college football's highest individual honor. But here's the thing about Earl Campbell. Texas didn't just want to remember him as a football player. They wanted to remember him as a hero. Literally. The Texas State Legislature later named him an official state hero of Texas. Think about that for a second. That puts his name next to Davy Crockett, next to Sam Houston, men who are taught in Texas history classrooms, who have statues and monuments built in their honor. A kid from a house of 11 children who lost his father at 11 years old and worked rose fields to help his mama make ends meet, was now etched into Texas history alongside the men who built the state itself. That's not a football story anymore. That's a Texas legend. When the 1978 NFL draft came around, there was no mystery about who was going first overall. The Houston Oilers scooped him up, and Earl Campbell didn't just meet the hype. He obliterated it. As a rookie, he swept every major award there was. Rookie of the Year, MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, all in one season, something almost unheard of for a first-year player. And there's one game people still talk about to this day, a Monday Night Football showdown against Miami where Earl ran for 199 yards and 4 touchdowns in front of a national audience. Announcers were running out of words to describe what they were watching. Houston fans who had been starving for a reason to believe suddenly had one wearing number 34. And that rookie year wasn't a fluke. For 3 straight seasons, Earl Campbell was named NFL Offensive Player of the Year. 3 years in a row, a level of consistent dominance most running backs never sniff in an entire career. He was averaging close to 1,700 rushing yards a season, numbers that running backs today would kill for, and he was doing it behind an offensive line that wasn't even the best in the league. In 1979, he took home the AP Most Valuable Player Award, an honor running backs rarely capture since quarterbacks usually dominate that conversation. Under head coach Bum Phillips, Earl became the heartbeat of the Love Ya Blue Oilers, a team that captured the hearts of an entire city desperate for a winner. The Astrodome would shake when Earl touched the ball. 3 straight years they fought their way deep into the playoffs, riding his legs all the way there. But every single time the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the great dynasties in NFL history, stood in their way, blocking Houston's path to the Super Bowl. It's one of the great what-ifs in NFL history. What if Earl Campbell had gotten his ring? What if Houston had broken through just once? But to understand what happened to Earl Campbell later in life, you have to understand how he played the game. This wasn't a back who danced around defenders or tiptoed out of bounds to avoid contact. Earl Campbell ran directly into the chest of whoever was trying to stop him. He sought out the collision instead of avoiding it. Defensive players would describe trying to tackle him like trying to tackle a runaway truck. Texas football legend Darrell Royal summed it up perfectly when he said, "Earl, don't take no prisoners." That single sentence tells you everything you need to know about his running style, and it tells you everything about what was coming for his body decades later. See, that violent, fearless, bulldowing style is exactly what made him one of the greatest to ever do it. Fans loved it. Defenders feared it. But it's also exactly what was quietly breaking him down, hit after hit, season after season, year after year. By the time Earl was still in his mid-20s, an age where most people are just getting started in their careers, just figuring out who they want to be, his body was already absorbing the kind of trauma that doesn't show up right away on an X-ray or in a press conference. It's the kind of damage that hides in the shadows for years, quietly accumulating, only to come roaring back decades later, when nobody's watching anymore. Midway through his 7th NFL season, the Oilers traded him to the New Orleans Saints, closing the book on his time in Houston. It was a new chapter, but not the one Earl had dreamed about either. After a season and a half in New Orleans, Earl made a decision that shocked a lot of people around the league. In the preseason of 1986, he walked away from football completely. He was sitting right on the edge of 10,000 career rushing yards, a milestone that would have cemented his name even further in the history books, alongside the greatest backs to ever play. But Earl looked at his body, looked at what football had already taken from him, and decided the cost wasn't worth it anymore. He chose to retire rather than chase one more number, choosing his long-term health over a stat line. Now here's where Earl Campbell's story takes a turn that a lot of fans never expected, because leaving the game didn't mean his struggles were over, not even close. In a lot of ways, the hardest part of his story was just getting started. Financially, things got rough. By his mid-40s, a man who once seemed unstoppable on the field found himself dealing with bankruptcy, a word nobody ever expected to hear attached to Earl Campbell's name. He had started a food company, hoping to build something lasting off the field using the trust people had in his name, but it failed. He opened a restaurant, pouring his savings and his hopes into it, but that failed too. Earl Campbell, Heisman winner, NFL MVP, Hall of Famer, official state hero of Texas, had to start completely over from nearly nothing. He went back to basics, building a new partnership selling sausage out of Texas, brick by brick, trying to rebuild something stable for himself and his family after watching 2 ventures collapse. And while he was fighting financial battles behind closed doors, his body was sending warning signs that things were only getting worse out in the open. Doctors told him his right knee needed a full replacement. Earl refused the surgery year after year, trying to push through it the same way he pushed through tacklers. His arches were in constant grinding pain. Simple things, walking long distances, climbing a flight of stairs, getting in and out of a car. became real struggles for a man who once outran entire defenses on national television. And all of this was happening years before the more severe mobility issues that fans see today even set in. This wasn't an overnight decline. This was a slow, grinding erosion that had been building quietly for decades, hidden behind public appearances and a smile. So now we get to the question everybody's been asking. What happened to Earl Campbell? Today, at 71 years old, Earl gets around using an electric scooter, a sight that breaks the heart of anyone who remembers watching him in his prime. For years, fans assumed this was simply the price of football, the natural result of all those bone-crushing collisions, all those years of refusing to go down easy, all those hits he absorbed instead of avoided. And honestly, that assumption makes sense. It lines up with everything we just talked about. The punishing style, the early wear and tear, the knee he refused to fix. But here's the twist that surprises a lot of people when they actually dig into it. Earl's current mobility struggles aren't actually a direct result of football contact at all. He was eventually diagnosed with spinal stenosis, a narrowing of the spinal canal that puts pressure on the nerves running down through the spine, causing pain, numbness, and difficulty walking. And what's wild is that this condition wasn't even diagnosed until well after his playing career had ended, years removed from his last snap in the NFL. So this is a story where the public connected the dots one way, assuming football alone broke him down, when the reality is more layered and complicated than that. Maybe years of impact contributed in ways doctors can't fully untangle. Maybe it didn't play a role at all. But the direct cause sneaking up on him later in life, separate from the violent hits everyone remembers and assumes, is the part of this story that often gets lost in translation. And despite everything, the financial collapse, the failed businesses, the physical pain, the diagnosis nobody saw coming, the surgery he kept refusing, Earl Campbell never disappeared. He never let his story end in defeat, and he never let people define him by his struggles. He rebuilt his name in business with Earl Campbell's smoked sausage, turning what started as a fresh start, a last resort after 2 failed ventures, into a brand that Texans proudly support to this day, lining grocery store shelves across the state, that once crowned him a hero. He remains one of the most beloved figures in Texas football history, and he still makes public appearances, showing up at events that honor everything he built, scooter and all, never hiding from the cameras. There's actually an award named after him in his hometown of Tyler, and Earl shows up every year to celebrate the next generation of Texas talent, passing the torch to kids who grew up hearing his name the same way he once heard about Davy Crockett and Sam Houston. So if you had told a young Earl Campbell grinding through practices in Tyler, Texas, working rose fields to help his mama feed 11 kids, that one day he'd be a Heisman winner, an NFL MVP, a Hall of Famer and an official state hero of Texas, he probably would have smiled and called it an impossible dream. And if you told him that decades later he'd be dealing with bankruptcy, spinal stenosis, and an electric scooter, he probably would have called that impossible too, in a much darker way. But that's exactly what makes Earl Campbell's story so human, so real, so worth telling. It's not a clean highlight reel. It's not just touchdowns and trophies and a bust in Canton. It's the full picture, the triumph and the toll, the glory and the grind, the man who never took prisoners on the field and who refused to let life take him down off of it either.